boldly engaging the mindless propaganda of our time, apparently with reason. This is Rage of the Age.
This is Rage of the Age, and we have with us today the main plaintiff for a lawsuit in California, Wendy Gish versus Gavin Newsom, concerning religious liberties in that state. I want to welcome her today. Wendy Gish, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
This suit that you have is a civil rights case suit filed against both the county of San Bernardino and against the state with the governor, Gavin Newsom. What's the overall attempt that you're trying to achieve with this lawsuit?
Well, the first thing is to push back on the state of California for overstepping the state constitution and then the federal constitution. Most people don't realize that the state is the parent and the federal government actually is the child. And the state constitution actually has those very same clauses in it. So we have to file against the state and the county because they're being ridiculous.
Right. And this is filed as a civil rights case. Is that right?
Yes, under the First Amendment.
Right. Now, is this going to be in the 9th District of California?
Yes, it is in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, or what I call Ninth Circus, because that's kind of what it is at this point. But yeah, it's currently at that position right now.
Now, being that location, I'm not by any means a legal strategist per se, but it seems like that's not home turf for this type of lawsuit. Is this going to be an uphill battle in the 9th District?
Yes, it will be an uphill battle because right now you have a liberal court and activist judges that are on that court. But regardless, if these judges, because the current administration actually has been changing the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, where it's going to be more balanced than unbalanced like it is now. So it's, in my opinion, God has it tucked away at the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals for now, just because of what's going on in Washington itself. So at SCOTUS.
So you're the main plaintiff of the case, having filed it with the lawyer who's representing this case. Her name is Harmeet Dillon. She works with the Center for American Liberty in California. Even though you're the main plaintiff, there are other churches and groups involved with this lawsuit. Is that right?
Yes, there's 3 other people that are involved. One is my direct pastor, Pastor Patrick Scales, Shield of Faith Family Church, and then Brenda Woods, who is Word of Faith International. And then you have James Moffit, who is Church Unlimited in Indio, California. You have 2 different counties involved at this point. You have San Bernardino County, which is my pastor and I, and then you have Riverside County, which is Pastor Brenda and Pastor James. So we have 2 counties involved in this particular suit just because of what they tried to pull. So we have to wrap them all up in one little package.
Now, as I was reading the different documents concerning this case that are thus far present, it says it's in response to executive orders that were issued on the 6th of April, the 7th of April, and the 19th of March. What was the one event, the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, that said, that's it, we have to file this suit? What pushed that button?
What pushed that button was, the weekend before Easter, we had never stopped having service, period, because we already knew that it was against our First Amendment rights, so we never stopped. But the county came out with their little edicts, and these executive orders are edicts, they are not laws. So there's a difference right there. They told us that we couldn't even do a drive-in service where you have people in the parking lot in their cars, pastors preaching out in front. We couldn't even have that, but yet a local drive-in theater actually was still open doing social distancing in my county, in San Bernardino County. So please tell me what the difference is between a drive-in movie and a drive-in sermon.
I don't know much of a difference there. Was you all penalized for having services because of that?
No, one of the other churches was James Moffit, Pastor James Moffit. He was. So he went ahead and filed along with us. But that's really not the point. Nowhere in the Constitution nor in God's word do I find there's a pandemic clause that your rights are automatically suspended. Nowhere. And if it is, somebody please send it to me because I can't find it. And so, but the other thing was then, but yet we have Walmart, Target, all those open to do other things. But when it came to Easter service, they told us that we couldn't even give the kids the candy baskets that we had made for them already. But I could walk into Walmart with that same group of children and go to where the candy was, pull it out, pay for it, and hand it to them in Walmart. Please tell me what the difference is. That's not equal protection under the law. That is actually pinpointing the church out at this point. But
that's
this
the nature.
Really,
that's the nature of this particular suit. Is it's discriminatory application of these measures, which seem heavy-handed towards the church, whereas it's not as heavy-handed towards other institutions.
Yes, that is correct. And that's one of the reasons why it was filed. We have to push back on tyranny.
Harmony Dillon, who filed this suit on your all's behalf, said that if a Californian is able to go to Costco or the local marijuana shop or liquor store and buy goods in a responsible, socially distanced manner, then he or she must be allowed to practice their faith using the same precautions. I think that's a pretty reasonable statement. Has the county not spoken with y'all about this, defended what they've done, readjusted anything of what's going on?
They did readjust it as far as having drive-in service, but that was after the lawsuit was filed, and that was through Gavin Newsom, where we were able to have that. But at that point, we were not going to give in to our lovely governor at this point, because if I can go do all those other things, then I can go to church and be responsible. I'm an adult. I think I can take care of myself. I don't need a daddy to take care of me.
Right. So. Well, you mentioned James Moffit's church, Church Unlimited in Indio, California, was fined. And from what I can see from other sources that have reported this story, it said it was a $1,000 fine because they had Palm Sunday service, and they were fined for that, just having a service on Palm Sunday service.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that what happened there?
Yes, that's my understanding. That's what happened.
My goodness. I wonder if people celebrated the 4th of July in California this weekend. Did they?
Oh, yeah, they celebrated it. You didn't see all the videos? You should go look at the video, because they basically told the governor.
I've seen the videos.
They told the governor they weren't having none of it. So they did their own. I mean, freedom.
Right, but none of them are fined. None of them have been hemmed up by any officials, right?
Nope.
But the church has a service on Palm Sunday, something that commemorates an event like the 4th of July, and yet they get $1,000 fine. Mm-hmm. Have they paid that fine yet, or is that still on hold?
I think that's still on hold. As far as I know. I don't know.
Okay.
But
well, I tell you, I am baffled because I've seen last week where it said that California had opened up the bars and cafes and clubs and other types of social meeting areas. And then not long after that said you can't sing in church. First of all, am I hearing that correctly? Is that what's going on over there?
Yes. Yes, that is what's going on over here.
Wow.
You can't sing in church because you might spread COVID. But I can go to a protest, not do social distancing in LA County, and that's okay. See, here's the problem. We're putting the thumb on the church, but it's okay for them to do their protesting under their First Amendment, but it's not okay for me to go to church under my First Amendment. So again, we're back to unequal. We're unequal here. And that's the thing that bothers me the most.
Right. That does seem troubling. It's an unequal application of the law. And it's not in California only.
No.
Other places, people have scratched their head wondering, okay, you come heavy fisted at these people, but then you act like you can't see a thing. And it's like right in front of your face and you say nothing about it. Or worse, you encourage it or endorse it, but then you turn around and still hem up these other people. It makes no sense to me. What else is going on in California that like exasperates this, like demonstrates this total unequal application?
Oh, well, there's some other things when it comes to COVID. They're letting people out of jail because they're afraid of COVID for them to catch it. But because of one of my jobs at a local fast food restaurant, I have to wear a mask. It's mandated for me to wear a mask. And I'm
Yes.
supposed to be okay. And I'm supposed to social distance myself. But if you're in a county jail, you're to be let out because of COVID and released from your sentence. So if it works for me, how come it's not working for all those that are in jail that actually committed a crime? Because now they're back out committing more crimes.
Right. Well, I'm curious, have people been incarcerated for violating any of these edicts or orders that are put out?
Not that I'm aware of. Most of the county sheriffs, the Riverside County Sheriff said that he was not going to enforce them because he was too busy trying to catch criminals. So he wasn't going to definitely enforce the mask rule. San Bernardino County Sheriff McMahon, he is not enforcing it. He doesn't have time. This county, San Bernardino County, actually is bigger than most states. Very few.
Wow.
Because if you look at the county map, it's bigger. And so they don't have time as sheriffs to go through and push. I mean, we had people emailing us, calling us, saying that they're going to call the county sheriffs. I'm like, go ahead. Bring them on. I mean, at this point, what difference? Let me borrow a phrase. What difference does it make at this point?
Well, that's not the only sheriff that has said that. I know many of the sheriffs around in our state have just said, "I'm just not going to bother to enforce this stuff." And I know around the country, many sheriffs are saying, you know, what really, that's what we're going to do with our police time. I can imagine how in some areas they're trying to defund the police, but then demand they, enforce all these other extra edicts by the same departments they want to underfund that can barely meet the task at hand now. Is anything compelling the ear of the governor right now in the state, or does he feel comfortable with his numbers, which tends to be a blue state? He probably is not in a fear of his political life, I imagine. Is there any way to, hold a man's feet to the fire or anything?
I wouldn't say that so much anymore because I'm hearing more and more that there's more and more Democrats that are angry because he's not only taken their rights away too. Humans were never meant to be alone ever. That's used for torture. I mean, you put somebody in a little box and leave them there for a while, they'll go insane. That's torture. So to me, that's what he's using at this point. And the fear factor, one thing you can go look up the New York Post and the New York Times. They're bringing COVID patients from Mexico into El Centro. So therefore, driving up the numbers in the state of California in overall. They're not sending them back. They're treating them here. But Mexico didn't want us to go over there. So tell me why they're bringing them over here. And President Trump already said, you need whatever, we will help you. So why bring them over? So there's other things that are afoot than just, just COVID, because I think it's ultimately about fear. And the Bible talks about God's not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And I'm not afraid of this. If I die as a Christian, I go to heaven. Okay, my family's going to be upset I'm gone, but it's better for me if I go,
Right. The things that are going on in the state there, And you said that you have met many Democrats who are angry with the things that are going on as well. And you said you're sensing some kind of change. I mean, are they willing to actually vote against the Democratic Party? They're that angry?
It's highly possible. It's highly possible. You'll never know until you get to the ballot box. And
Right.
when it comes to the ballot box, there's some stuff going on in California because he wants to do a mail-in vote where you send the mail out
Of course.
to everyone. So,
Yeah.
which is not going to have any kind of fraud or anything. I mean, you could go
No, of
back
course
and
not.
see. So this is one way to ensure that he stays in power. But if anybody from California is listening, please take your ballot to the polling place and drop it in. Do not put it in the mail.
The mail-in ballots, has that been established yet, or are they still discussing that?
No, they've put it into effect. There's some stuff I think between the federal and the state that's going on that I don't remember all the details on. But I know Trump has tweeted that he's not going to do his best not to let it stand. So we will see, in November what happens there.
Yes, I got to say I'm sensing a major upset by many who are Democrats, not just in California, but all over the country. And I read articles of gay people wanting to leave the Democratic Party. You have the Blexit movement with blacks wanting to leave the Democratic Party. And initially in my head, I'm thinking, well, your natural ally is the Democratic Party, but that's how frustrated they are with that party, that they want to leave it.
Actually, even you have Lexit, which is Latinos. But a lot of those groups they're really actually in more conservative than they are liberal Democrats because of what they believe in, their faith. Their faith is their main thing. And if they knew really what was happening and overall, I think that they would change. And there's a big movement out here as far as that goes. Of course, then you have the walk away movement through Brandon.
Right.
But there's just some things that are happening in the background. There's a silent majority out there that are sitting back and watching all the hypocrisy that is going on. And just because they're not boisterous doesn't mean they're not going to do something at the ballot box. That's how President Trump got elected in the first place.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Despite the polls, despite the predictions, despite everybody going to bed that night thinking it's over, and they wake up and go, what just happened?
Exactly.
You're very right. Yes. Yeah. I know me and my wife went to bed that night just like in dread thinking, yeah, Hillary's probably got this. And we woke up the next morning like, did you hear? Trump actually won. We were totally shocked. It definitely shocked a lot of people.
Yes.
I hope that happens again this November, honestly. I hope a lot of those who are sitting on the sidelines do get enough gumption to say that's it and vote them out.
Well, the bad part here in California, from the numbers that I've been told, I don't have them with me, but 14 million conservative Christians did not vote, are not registered to vote. In San Bernardino County alone, there is 2.2 million. And only like 1.1, around 1.1 are registered to vote. And then you break that down, and you've probably had less than 500,000, maybe 600,000 voted in 2018. So there's a whole group of people out there that think that their vote doesn't count. But when you have 2 million people thinking their vote doesn't count, guess what? It can be swayed either way. So
2 million votes, a lot of votes.
Yeah. So a lot of the country doesn't vote, and they need to get registered, and they need to figure out what's going on in this world. I mean, it's your vote. Your vote is your voice. You can vote with your money. Like, I don't go to Hollywood movies. I rarely deal with that whatsoever. You have more than one way to vote, and it's not always at the ballot box. People need to be involved with their local city councils. Everything that goes on, I have less things going on with the federal government than I do local, and then the state. All politics are local because you elect local people. So everything is local, then it spreads out from there. Right now in California, we have a supermajority. A supermajority means that in the House and in the Assembly and the Senate, there's more Democrats than there are Republicans. So whatever, and then you've got Governor Farrow, as I call him, that can just sign legislation through. Even if we got a Republican governor, they can actually overturn anything that he vetoed. So this is why people need to get involved, because this supermajority is allowing stuff to happen like this. Gavin Newsom changed over 200 laws, which is illegal in the state of California, according to the California Constitution, but nobody knows it. There's a couple senators, assemblymen that have filed a lawsuit, and they're lawyers, and they argued the case against the state to try to get this overturned. Okay. So people need to pay attention, really. I mean, absolutely. Not as much as I do, but I mean, they have. So
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. If you really like Rage of the Age, we will encourage you to leave a review on the platform that you're listening to, but especially if you would like a copy of my book, Not in the Wind, Earthquake, or Fire, which is a first-hand account of my second deployment to Iraq, and it's filled with many spiritual insights. I'm going to give away 10 copies for free, and every week I will give out a copy for someone who leaves a review of this podcast. You can do that by going to Twitter, write your review, and then hashtag it Rage of the Age Now. Or you can go to Facebook, find our page, Rage of the Age, click the reviews, recommend us, and then write in your review. I hope next week to give away a copy of Not in the Wind, Earthquake, or Fire to someone who leaves a review.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Pay attention and be involved, like you said. It's the local officials and the state officials are just as important, if not more so, than just waiting every 4 years to go vote.
They control my life. They control my quality of life, ultimately.
Yes.
So federal government does to a certain degree. But again, you go back to the state is the parent, federal government is the child. The state actually rules over the federal government on certain things. Now, this state decided that it was going to do some stuff to try to overstep the federal, which that is not how that part is done. But this is why people need to be involved.
As far as this case is, though, with Wendy Gish versus Gavin Newsom, what are we looking at right now? What's the current status? Are you waiting for certain things? Waiting for a hearing? Are you gathering information?
They're waiting for a hearing at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So as soon as that, with the way he keeps opening and closing the state, I don't know when that's going to be heard. And like I said, I believe that God actually has it tucked away right now, because John Roberts has done some things that I'm not so sure if he's even following the Constitution. But that's my personal opinion.
So are you saying he has shut down the operations of the courts at time because of the COVID?
Yeah, because they do social distancing. So one of the ones that I got to listen to, which was the preliminary injunction against the state of California, we did it over like GoToMeeting Zoom type thing. So, and I was able to listen in to see, just because I'm fascinated now with all this, how all this works.
Yeah. So what's the next big thing happening, though? So you have the hearing. Is it just to be heard initially, or is it actually going to decide something?
They'll decide at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Either they will side with us or side against us. If they side with us, then the state can decide whether they want to continue, which send it to the Supreme Court to be heard there.
Right.
Or if they chose not to and we won, then that would be the end of it. But with this current state government that we have, it's going to go to the Supreme Court ultimately.
It probably is. There's certainly precedents in other states that have been formed where governors have been challenged, and the courts have upheld those challenges against the governors. So I'm hoping that they will do what they're supposed to, using those precedents and include them in those cases.
Well, that's why having judges that are constitutional lawyers, basically, and really the real Constitution, not this activist Constitution that we see right now, because one of our judges, I believe, was an activist. So, which is trying to rewrite laws at the court level and not let the Congress do what it's supposed to do, and it needs to get off its tail too, and do what it's supposed to do. It's pretty bad, but we're just waiting. Like I said, I believe God has it tucked away for a reason.
Has political opposition been permitted to operate in California, or are there like little ways they try to shut down, like say political rallies or anything like that? Or
I didn't let that stop me. I was out doing 2 different protest rallies, freedom rallies, for the state. It's we have the right to peacefully assemble. And again, I wasn't going to let the county tell me, or the state tell me that I can't do it under the First Amendment rights. So I'm just done. I'm done. And I know each county supervisor here. I don't know them personally, but I know who they are. I have met them all, and I don't care. I don't care. You'll see me in court. That's all. It's no longer about party. It's about principle, and the principle is my First Amendment rights and my freedom. Although we were given these freedoms long before the Constitution was even formed. So they just confirmed the rights that I already had given by God a long time ago.
But has the county or the state level taken action against any political rallies or any political activity like that where they deem it's not fit or something?
They did in Sacramento. There's, I think you can find on Center for American Liberties. I think it's Ron Gibbons. He had wanted to have a protest up there, and they revoked his license or his request under the COVID. So, but that's on her website also, which you can find.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's other spontaneous gatherings that they just let fly with no apprehension.
Well, yeah. I live in Southern California, and in the town that I live in, I'm sitting in my room one night, and you can hear the helicopters flying over and them talking through their squawk box because they had, people out in the street. I am not for people protesting in the street. If you're going to protest, don't do it in front of cars. Cars will win every time.
Yes.
So I listened to that, but they didn't shut them down. They let them, hang out in the street. They eventually did move them off, but they didn't really do anything ultimately here. So if they're not going to do anything to us, they better not do anything to us, which they haven't.
Well, that's the nature, I guess, of the complaint of your lawsuit is a civil rights lawsuit that you're applying restrictions in one case but not another. You're discriminating in its application, and in this case specifically, you're particularly targeting churches. Have other religious faiths been treated in a similar manner? Like, has the Hindu temples been fined, or mosque, or anything like that, or is it just churches?
Not that I'm aware of, but the First Amendment doesn't just cover the church. It also covers Sikh temples, that covers Hindu temples, it covers mosque, it covers everything. Because in this country we have the right to religious freedom. That's really what it's about. They just did it at Easter, which pinpointed the church directly. So that's why.
Well, yeah, Palm Sunday is definitely a Christian holiday.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you knew of any cases where they had applied that to any other particular holy day, to some other different religion, or they just don't care to enforce it on them for some reason?
Not that I'm aware of. We just went through Ramadan, I believe, and I haven't heard anything. But again, if Muslims want to go to their mosque, you have a right in this country to do that.
Right. Well, I was just wanting to see if you knew of any. I wanted to compare because I'm under the impression that people of certain political persuasions take every chance they get to take a shot at the American church, well, Christianity in the country, every chance they get, whether legal or not. If they get an advantage, they take it. And I think this is one of them. It's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today about this this case here, Wendy Gish versus Gavin Newsom in California. I hope it accomplishes the task. It's probably going to be a longer task because it is ninth district court, and it's going to. They're just flat out stubborn. I don't think they can actually read, much less the Constitution itself. They're not doing the job of a judge. They never have. They're just straight up, like you said, they're creating laws. They make a decree and say, this is my law. And then, they remove the legislative process as it was meant to function. If somebody is listening to this and wanted to somehow help you out with this case, or help, not just you, but you got the other churches that are involved. I imagine others may want to join in with you as maybe time goes on. If someone wanted to help with this, what could they do?
Well, one thing that they can do is they can go to libertycenter.org/donate, and then they can donate to the cause, because this is, when it goes to the Supreme Court, it's going to cost money to do so.
Oh, yes.
And it's already costing a lot of money. Right now, Harmeet Dillon, Mark Moisier, and the group has filed 15 lawsuits in the state of California against the state of California. So we're pushing back on all areas. One thing that you will find in this state is that we are heading towards communism big time, taking away the rights. That's why I believe that he's really pushing this to shut down churches. Because when you push communism, you take God out of the equation. So in order to take God out of the equation, you have to close down the churches. So people don't have the power that they need. Power comes from being with people and having a collective mind and going forward and worshiping and praising God. The Bible talks about if we don't sing to God, the very rocks will cry out. Well, I'm not going to let a rock cry out in my place. And this weekend, we went to church, we sang, we did all the social distancing, the best we can. I can't do that at the fast food restaurant, social distancing, because we're busy and we're doing, people need their food, they want their food. But this is the kind of stuff that people need to wake up. One thing that we were going to do here in California, because ballot harvesting is legal, is ballot harvest at church. So you want to know one way to overturn a state? Ballot harvest at a church, especially right now. So there's so many aspects going on with that, that we can actually make headway in this state if people would actually get off their couches and actually get involved. And that's really what it's about.
That term ballot harvesting has been out a few places. I'm not even sure I fully comprehend it. I'm sure others may not as well. Can you kind of explain what that is, ballot harvesting?
Ballot harvesting. Okay, according to the county register, voter registrar, they get a list. The Democrat Party, the Republican Party, the Green Party, the Liberal Party, Libertarian Party, and you can go to those particular houses that you have most likely have a relationship with at this point, and knock on their door and ask for their ballot. And if they don't fill it out, they can fill it out, give it to that person, and then the person whoever picks it up can take it to the county registrar's office or to a polling place and turn it in. That's in essence what ballot harvesting is. you go by a list that's already there. So all the people that rarely vote that are on the voter rolls, and there are a ton of those, they can go knock on their door and say, hey, we'll take your ballot in for you. So, and then in some cases they could fill them out and have this person sign the back of the card, or the back of the envelope, excuse me.
That just seems to bypass scrutinies that have been in place for years, where you can watch each other and the shenanigans. Someone might pull, you have someone who's like a referee going, hey, that's not legal. You've totally removed that with that method. Are there any safeguards in place I'm not aware of?
No, because somebody can hand, who's to say that they don't just hand that ballot to a person, sign the back, and go, you fill it out to whatever you want.
Right.
It's just, and I'm sure it's been done through the years. Technically, you're supposed to, as a relative, only a relative could do it, but now anybody can do it. And that's that's how we lost the Senate.
Like if I'm collecting ballots, and I don't know, let's say hypothetically, I don't like who you're voting for, and I just say, lose your ballot, right? There's no way to verify it was even given.
No,
there's no tracking of it whatsoever.
Who's to say that they didn't switch them out for something else and send it in as your name? Because there's no scan done in San Bernardino County. I can't go look at my ballot that I filled out and took to the polling place, because that's what I do, because I'm usually involved on polling days. So take it. Who's to say? Who's to say? Because, or they opened it up there, didn't like it, changed it there, and it went through. I mean, I did do some poll watching, which none of that went on at that time. But who's to say? Who's to say? That's why I say if you've got ballot harvesting and if you've got a mail-in ballot, take it to a polling place. Do not use the USPS to send your ballot in. Just take it. Right. Just take it. That you have a better guaranteed chance that your vote will count that way.
I'm absolutely astonished. Oh my goodness. That's something I would expect, I don't know, Saddam Hussein to pull or something, where he would win 100% elections. I mean, nobody would question it, and everyone would watch. I mean, elections around the world, we in our country look at them and go, oh, they can't hold a proper election. They're cheating, or they're not verifying their votes. And we're having it right here in our own country, legal in states, big states like California.
Well,
Insane.
It's called win by any means necessary. And if that means lie, cheat, steal, blow up, whatever, that's what they're going to do. Yeah. I mean, that's what they're going to do. Who's to say that this state isn't actually red?
Well, how can you when you're not even properly counting ballots?
Exactly. If we're not counting them properly, or things are happening and things could be changed in the background. One thing I did find out, I don't know if it's still true, when they were transferring stuff between registrar and the Secretary of State, it was actually going to another country's server, not even in the state of California and back. And that's a known fact. So the other thing that people can look into is the Election Integrity Project California, and they're helping fight along with Judicial Watch, and they have filed lawsuits against LA County because they have 110% above what is even registered that could be registered in the state of California. Where are all those ballots going, and who's filling all those out?
Well, I mean, that right there demonstrates there's a problem with the method.
Yes.
I don't understand how they can stand there with a straight face and say we won, or that is fair.
Because when you've learned to lie all your life, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't bother you. So. But those are the things. So that was one thing to follow, is judicial lawsuits for the state of California, because those are coming through. If they don't take care of the voter rolls, and this is the other thing people need to be aware of, voter rolls need to be cleaned. And there is an act that Clinton put in that was supposed to take care of this, but California has refused to clean up their rolls.
Wow.
My mom died a couple years ago in Kansas, and death is a part of life, unfortunately. But
Yes.
she lives in Kansas, and the very next election after she died was like March or April, I think, and she was already off the voter rolls in a short period of time. We still have people on them that's over 100 years old. That we don't have that many people in the state that are over 100 years old.
Wow.
That's just the stuff that goes on because they're not clearing out the rolls. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. So it leaves a wide open area for cheating to happen.
Definitely. Wendy, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today about this. I sincerely hope this lawsuit that has been filed against the state and the county prevails eventually. It may go to the Supreme Court, like you say, and if so, so be it. It needs to be established. I never thought I'd be seeing the day in this country where we have to go to the Supreme Court to say, hey, remember what it said in the First Amendment? Can that still apply? I mean, it's almost like we're asking permission to have what is supposed to be established in the first place. But I sincerely hope that goes a long way. And I thank you for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me tell my story and all the subsequent stories that's going along with that.
It's time for the question of the week. Last week's question of the week was, is the Bible a collection of myths and legends? And I want to highlight a response by David Porter, who said, no, it's not. But if it was, applying what it says has proven very effective in my life personally, from the daily reasonable application to the working and experiencing of miracles listed just like those within its pages. I appreciate that response, David. I can definitely echo many of those sentiments that you're talking about. If it's not real, it has definitely become very real in my life as well as many others. This week's question of the week I want to ask you is this. Are there government officials that are purposely targeting Christians and churches in this country? I'm going to post that question on Facebook, on the Rage of the Age page, and also on Twitter, Rage of the Age Now. When you see that question, interact with it, and I will consider one of those responses for next week's episode. Again, the question of the week is, are there government officials that are purposely targeting Christians and the church in this country?
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
For this essay segment, I want to discuss further the case of Wendy Gish versus Gavin Newsom, which is the case that we are talking about in the interview, where Wendy Gish, being the main plaintiff, and the other churches have joined in a lawsuit against the state of California and also against the counties that they're in for the restrictions placed upon their churches and what they're allowed and are not allowed to do. Actually, the full name of the case is Wendy Gish et al. Versus Gavin Newsom et al. Et al. Latin meaning and all. There are other parties involved rather than just Wendy and the governor. That's basically the definition of the two sides. The et al. Is including all the parties involved. Because like I said, other churches have joined in this lawsuit, but also there are other government entities besides the state of California which are being challenged in some of the ways they executed their office. This week on our Rage of the Age page, this upcoming episode was posted to let others know that it was coming, and it had quite a bit of reaction to it, both for and against. And those who were for it, gave, prayers, go for it, good, glad to see it. A few other descriptions of why we need to remove all Democrats from power and other things like this. But what caught my attention is those who oppose the idea or didn't think maybe it should even be a lawsuit, perhaps. And I look at the reasoning as to why it really stuck out to me this week. The reason it stuck out to me is because none of those who spoke against it had a reason for defeating the lawsuit itself based upon the reason it was issued. No one said it is not a violation of religious liberty, nor explained how it was not. And that is basically the premise of the case. Instead, what I saw was a series of answers that went in other directions. In logic, you would call this red herring fallacies, where you would basically change the subject and talk about something else as a way of proving a counterpoint which has nothing to do with what you're discussing. We even had some ad hominem attacks where you basically attack the person, not the ideas in which they are presenting. But I want to go ahead and highlight a few of those responses in regards to the concepts of them as to what is presented as the counter for churches suing the government to protect their religious liberty. One of them was a comment, and it wasn't a full-fledged comment, but I kind of get the gist of the nuance that was meant by the statement. Something about how great science is, and you should listen to it, and you'll become a follower of it in no time. And of course, as I perceive this statement to be, because not only have I been on the receiving end of this statement numerous times, I used to use this statement when I wasn't exactly in line with the church earlier in my days. The premise is that the church is unscientific, and so are Christians. And in this regard, they're obviously ignoring the science, the health issues, and therefore you're being foolish in the practice of your religion because of what science is proving about the sickness. Again, it does not address the issue of have civil rights been violated with the exercise of their religion. But nonetheless, the point is made that, well, you're ignoring the health issues because you're unscientific, and I guess by extension, that means you should lose your case, or that you should not even file your case, which does not refute the plaintiff's claim that religious liberties had been violated by state and local government. Another point that was brought up is in a similar vein, but it doesn't come from the high-minded, I'm smarter than you approach. It's basically, it was one of those pathos-oriented arguments where it jerks at the heart. You know, how would you like it if you were on a ventilator type thing? Well, just so you know, I probably wouldn't like it. Those who care for me probably wouldn't like it either. So no one wants the ventilator. I think we can agree to that. But basically it's this stuff is scary. It could kill you. Why are you messing with it? And that's sort of where that argument was going as well. Again, it did not even bother to address whether civil liberties regarding a person's religious faith had been violated or not. Not at all. I'm pretty sure that these churches and those who go to the churches are not hoping to get sick. I'm pretty sure they believe there is a COVID-19. We all know people who have been affected by it. It's just they don't believe it's going to stop them in the exercise of their religious liberties. If they take health precautions like everybody else, they should be allowed to exercise their God-given rights, protected by the highest law in the land, the Constitution, to exercise freely that religion without the interference of the government. And that is the most basic foundation in the Constitution that you could possibly establish. That is why the lawsuit is being issued. And this is a summary of some of those comments. Feel free to go read them for yourself. If you want to comment about them, or if you agree with them, add your comments. I have been asked by some why I don't remove certain comments from the pages. And my answer is, well, I don't want to become like them. I don't want to become like that which I am speaking against, and one of the purposes of this podcast. I'm not afraid of open, honest, intellectual debate. I will not back down from it. I am not intimidated about it. I am pretty certain in my ideas and the logic of it, the coherency of it, and even the justice of it. I'm not ashamed of them. And I am not threatened when someone comes along with a contrary opinion and throws it out there. If anything, it helps us understand why people think the way they do, and so that we can close that bridge and make them understand what we're saying when we talk about things such as religious liberty. And here's how much I am not worried about it. If somehow I could be made to understand logically, coherently, that something they're saying is actually right and maybe I didn't get it right, I'm willing to alter my opinion. Why? Because I am seeking the truth. I don't want to come with people to prove I'm right. We are seeking the truth. Once I see what the truth is, then I want to follow it. So I am not scared of open investigation into anything, no matter how crazy it may sound when I enter into that discussion. But in all, the reason this lawsuit was put in place was simply because the government took heavier actions towards churches than it did to a lot of other entities, all in the name of science and health and safety and all these other reasons. Yet they did not apply that equally to other groups that were just as a threat, if you will, if the science and the health holds out. By the way, this COVID stuff, you can't sit there and hide behind the word "will science" because there's no consensus on a lot of stuff yet. They're still studying and investigating it, which they should if they're going to consider themselves scientists. Science, above all, cannot be political. And you can't say science is on your side when, if scientifically speaking, we don't even know a lot about this COVID yet on how to fight it. We don't have the vaccine. We've had different theories of how it spreads and don't spread. Masks are good, but then they're not good. They help, but then they don't. This thing is a good thing, but then it doesn't matter. You can catch it through surfaces, but then it's been shown maybe it don't. The consensus is there's no consensus. So you can't just throw out health concerns and science when we don't even know. But even if we were to take these drastic actions, the problem that a lot of governors and local officials have fallen into is they will overexert in one area but then ignore others. And it usually has to do with their bias and what groups they favor versus just being universal to all. If you're going to shut down a lot of things, you have to do it to everything. And you have to make stringent measures for everybody. But when you are strict here, say, with the churches, but not with others, well, then that's a problem. That you are obviously discriminating the application of your law, which is expressly prohibited in the concepts of our Constitution, especially when it comes to liberties and rights which are actually acknowledged in the Constitution, literally, itself. Just because there's a crisis doesn't mean you can take them away. They have to be considered. One of the points of the lawsuit was if Californians can enjoy other things in atmospheres that are set up healthy, they should be able to do that in their religious life as well. And that's what's being denied to them. And I ponder this. It's hard to find any news on it because honestly, nobody's looking for it because I think the big media knows this will embarrass them if they actually investigated it. But I'm willing to bet no officials have taken any actions or fines or anything against a mosque or a temple or any other kind of religious group. But the minute a church decides we're going to hold church on Palm Sunday, here comes California slapping a $1,000 fine on you on a very holy and religious day for that religion. I don't believe we would have done that on Ramadan to Muslims, or their Eid feast that they would have, or other observations that any religious group would have, I'm willing to bet no official had the guts to enforce that on them. But you're brave when it comes to the church. One, because they probably have a dislike of the Christian religion, and two, they feel they have the political support to bully them and get away with it. But they don't have it to go bully other faiths. To me, it's not just about religious liberty. It's also about faulty leadership by those who are afraid to do what they're supposed to do and uphold people's rights. And if you're going to take these drastic measures to protect everybody's health because of the science, well, then you have to do it evenly for the goal you're trying to achieve. But when you pick and choose groups that you oppose that on, you're obviously using it for political leverage against people you don't care for. That is a violation of liberty. It's cool when you apply it to somebody else. But if it was in reverse and done against you, well, then you'd probably have a problem with it. That is why I love my country. That is why I see the beauty in the concepts that laid it down from the very beginning, because it has the ability to adapt to our circumstances, but it also stands on timeless principles where you can't take away rights, and they must be preserved. One of the functions of the government is to preserve those rights and to not take them away. But it seems that some governors and local officials are determined to rule by decree. They make a grand proclamation, and that's suddenly the law of the land. I want you to think about this in closing. Do you really want a government where you have one person that on the whim of a day just decides we're going to do this, and it applies over the whole state, over the whole county, or whatever jurisdiction they have, and there's no debate, there's no discussion, there's no consideration and deliberation in a legislature, and it is simply enforced like it's law because they said so? Well, that's what we have, friends. And maybe that makes you feel safe because of health and science, but what you're asking for is unleashing of a box of demons, the likes of which you have no idea. Why? Because you live in a safe bubble called America, and you think that the things you're asking for are not going to come back on you, but they will. And if you've ever been anywhere else where you see people not have the liberties that you think are trifle, maybe you would change your mind.
You've been listening to Rage of the Age. If you loved today's podcast, make sure to leave a review on the media you're listening through. Secure future episodes by heading over to rageoftheage.com and clicking the RSS feed button. Until next time, this has been Rage of the Age.